For me, I'm a Kansas City guy, born and raised here in the Midwest. I got into safety kind of on accident. I was a volunteer firefighter when I was in high school and was trying to be a volunteer firefighter. And I ended up going to school at the University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg and was trying to sign up for a fire science degree. And just how the degrees were arranged, I had to take something with it. So I looked at the safety degree because it was literally the next page on the book. So I got into the safety program and started going through the courses. And by the time I graduated, I was really interested in more of a safety career than a firefighter career.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zell. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zell, and today I have Chris Braamse, and he is the vice president of DH Pace Company. Now, DH Pace is a company that I am excited to learn more about. I did not know much about them when we first started. Really cool company, really cool things that they do, and we'll talk about that. The man has had a amazing experience, amazing journey. Chris is a father, he's a husband, he's a leader in the community. We're going to talk about a couple of medals that he won in the past on a very cool thing he just told me about, which is super fun. And we'll talk a little bit about the things that he's involved with. But first and foremost, I want to thank you, Chris, for being here and ask you to tell us about who you are as a man and as a human, because that's what this is all about.
Well, thank you for having me. It is really a treat. This is my first podcast to be able to participate in. It's fun to listen to them, so it's kind of fun to be on the inside or behind the curtain a little bit with you. I do appreciate the opportunity.
Of course.
For me, I'm a Kansas City guy, born and raised here in the Midwest. I got into safety kind of on accident. I was a volunteer firefighter when I was in high school and was trying to be a volunteer firefighter. And I ended up going to school at the University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg. And I was trying to sign up for a fire science degree. And just how the degrees were arranged, I had to take something with it. And so I looked at the safety degree because it was literally the next page on the, in the book. And in the time it took them to sign me up, I thought, you know what, that was interesting to me. So I got into the safety program and started going through the courses. And by the time I graduated, I was really interested in more of a safety career than a firefighter career. And so that's what I did. And I've never moved very far from home. I moved all around Kansas City. I've lived in pretty much, all four quadrants and the middle of it. But this has been my hometown.
That's fantastic. My one of my dear friends, she is an early investor in the company. She runs a VC firm in town called Iron Prairie. And she is actually in Kansas City. And I've been able to go out there a few times. I love your town just for so many reasons. It's a really, really special place. So you moved all around physically. Before we get into some of the business side of things, tell us about your life. You're married, kids. Talked a little bit about your lake going adventures. I mentioned that I get a Lake of the Ozarks with a friend, and you go to another lake. So tell me just about your social side of your life.
I've been married to a great woman for 17 years. I don't know if I found her or if she found me. I probably found her down at school. The funny thing is when I went to college, my dad was more concerned with me finding a girl with a degree than getting a degree. So I was happy to come out with both. I have two great kids. I have a 15-year-old who's starting to learn to drive. And then I have a 12-year-old who wants to start learning to drive. Both of them very active in sports and do a lot of stuff. We spend a lot of time at the lake, and our philosophy is when When we're down at the lake, then there's no Wi-Fi, there's no TV. We do that on purpose. Our kids have to talk to us. We have to spend quality time together. Um, we spend a lot of time on the boat for that reason. So we actually spend a lot of time on Truman Lake, which Truman Lake is a pretty, there's a lot of people that will stay away from it because there's a lot of trees in it and you really need to know the lake. Where Lake of the Ozarks.
It's above the dam, right? You were saying it's above the dam. Okay.
Yeah.
And so now I know Lake of the Ozarks is a very, very deep lake. It's a massive vehicles. It's kind of a crazy situation. I mean, it's so big, not everywhere on the lake, of course, but it's got its points that's really nuts. Now on Truman Lake, so there's trees and so forth. It probably isn't a very deep lake. Is it a fishing lake? Do you guys fish? And
yeah, it's a great fishing lake. Lake of the Ozarks, I would say is similar to probably Lake Havasu in your area, right? And then Truman Lake it's shallower. I think the deepest part of the lake is maybe 60 feet, and the majority of the lake is 20 to 40 feet deep. But you can be out on that lake on a holiday weekend, have boats around to us. It's great for taking the kids tubing and doing your fishing and stuff. I also spent a lot of time on that lake through the winter duck hunting, and so we were really never not on the lake. We just switch boats, right? We'll go from a pontoon boat to a fishing boat to a duck boat, back to a fishing boat, back to a pontoon boat, just depending on the time of year.
how far is that from home for you all? Like, is it a big journey for you to get out there from home?
No, it's about an hour and 20 minutes for us to get to our place down there.
Yeah, that's always good. I have a lot of friends that have vacation spots, but they take too much time to get to, and they complain about it a fair amount because you got to drive 3.5 hours each direction. You can't easily pop out there on a Friday afternoon and have a weekend. Where you can if you're an hour and a half away. I mean, you wake up early on Saturday and have a nice long weekend and be back on Sunday night and back to the grind. So tell us a little bit about your journey from a career perspective. So you graduated with a safety degree, and it's funny because not a lot of people actually do that in this industry. A lot of folks are, they are accidental safety professionals and get their degrees and get their certifications, but often start as you did. I mean, you started as wanting to be a firefighter, but they'll start as a welder or as a manufacturing superintendent or something, and then they'll go into into safety. So how did what was your first job when you got out of school?
My first job out of school was a safety technician for a company called Deaf and Ball Industries. And Deaf and Ball was a trash company here in the Midwest. They're now owned by Waste Management. But it was a decent sized company. I'm going to say around 2,500 people or so. We had about 800, trash trucks, so rear loaders, side loaders, front loaders. And I started out with them primarily doing training for them. So I would spend pretty much all day training drivers and helpers and mechanics on, safety training topics. And I kind of spent about 1.5 years of my life doing nothing but training. And then got out of the training room and started doing more inspections and audits for them. And eventually got all the way up into, over an 8-year period, I got all the way up into being the director of safety for them. And the trash industry was such a unique place to be. We had a lot of accidents and injuries, a lot of moving parts. Everything in the trash industry is big. It's very unforgiving. Actually, at the time when I was there, trash was the 5th most dangerous occupation in the country. I always made a joke that, or pointed out that everything that was more dangerous than the trash industry had its own TV series on Discovery Planet or something like that.
It's so true. It's so true. So funny or interesting story around that. We'll continue down your journey. But my father and mother met in high school in Southern California, in Los Angeles, long time ago. It was a very different place back then. They were born in the mid 40s, so they would have been in high school in kind of the late 60s. And one of the guys my dad was a racer. He had a 55 Chevy, and they'd work on him, and kind of that old greaser kind of a time of the world, which I'm kind of envious of because it sounded like it was a really fun time to be a kid, and his best friend, who was his best friend till the day the man passed, was a son of a regional trash operator, and the family owned it for like multiple generations, and even Alan ran it until eventually they retired. One of the stories he tells, and it tells you about how dangerous trash world is he goes, we would have folks in the trash trucking, trash hauling side overstuff the trucks, compress them, and try and see who could get more weight into the truck, and they would combust because they had the fumes and all the gases, and then compression, it would combust. Then, of course, the fire people would come and they put them out with water, and all the tires would blow out because of the weight, because now you have wet, compacted stuff. And then they would call his towing company and say, we need you to come tow one of our trucks away. And he goes, nope, not going to do it. There is nothing I have in my fleet that can move that thing. It is so heavy that they would have to do that. But it made me realize some of the things about trash hauling as a kid when I heard that story. You've got gases that come from this environment. You have compression, which can be explosive or combustible. You have pressure and hydraulics and lifts and all this stuff. So it must have been quite interesting from a safety perspective too. So what were your areas of focus when you were there on the training side of kind of the things that wanted to kill you during when you did that job?
My areas of focus were on injury and incident prevention and OSHA compliance. And as I was with them for a long time, I got into DOT compliance with them as well. And also we had MSHA because, we're digging a big hole and we're selling everything out of that hole eventually to fill up with trash. So we had MSHA as well, but I primarily focused on the safety side of it for injury prevention. And, it was such a great opportunity. I always tell people at the time when I was in it, it was frustrating to me, but it was baptism by fire. It was so much experience so fast for a brand new safety professional, from incident and injury standpoints and OSHA inspections and MSHA inspections, and just so much going on. So I tell people, I wish I had the forethought. And this is actually something I would recommend to any young safety professional also, is to start journaling all the weird things that you have to deal with in safety. Because when you're old, you can sit down and take all this as an inspiration to write a really probably best-selling book. If you just put all those situations together and to create characters and make it into a situation.
It's so funny you should say that. So one of the things, and by the way, Chris, I have no idea if you guys are a customer or you do business with us. It doesn't matter to me. Never does. And so I don't even ask when people come onto the podcast. You may or may not be, but one of the things that I often say is the reason why I love our YellowBird professionals is because they do bring, many of them are of an age where they're doing this because they love the experience of being able to get back to the community. And they want to be able to, if they're retired, they want to be able to do a training, or if they want to do a survey, or, if they're not retired and they're wherever they are, they've got their experience and we use that experience for good. But the stories that we have heard that people can tell are just, absolutely, well, kind of like the one I just told. Like, that was a story of an old truck, towing guy who told a story about it. And it's like, it wouldn't have been that interesting to say, oh yeah, they used to call me when we used to tow away trash trucks that broke down. But the fact that story had to do with combustion and water and exploding tires and weight, it's like, it's kind of a fun story. That was kind of cool. So
yeah,
same thing.
Got a lot of them for sure. Yeah,
I'm sure. So after you've gone through that journey with you with the refuse company, and did you come straight to where you are today at DH Pace?
No, I did not. I actually, I worked for Deaf and Ball for 4 years, and then I had an opportunity to, it was very appealing to me to switch industries periodically. I right from the get-go in safety, I recognized that it would have been very easy to get kind of stuck in an industry. So I had an opportunity and I left Deaf and Ball after 4 years and I went to Valspar. So Valspar had a powder coat manufacturing facility in Kansas City. And I was a site safety manager at that facility. And I was there for 18 months. Unfortunately, that was during the 2007, 2008 recession. And the coatings business is not as recession resilient as the trash business is. So I left Deaf and Ball on good terms. Everyone wished me well and they, just saw that I was trying to build a career. So we left on good terms. But when that opportunity at Valspar fell through, then I went back to Deaf and Ball for another 4 years. So my first, 9.5 years or so was Deaf and Ball and then Valspar, then back to Deaf and Ball. And then after another 4 years at Deaf and Ball, something started happening in my career. I was really focusing on networking. I was part of the American Society of Safety Professionals. I was actually currently a president of our local chapter and was really, had a good network going. And someone approached me and said, "Hey, we have an opportunity. We think you'd be great for it. Would you consider it?" And so it was actually for a company called C.H. Gunther and Son. And Gunther is a food manufacturing facility. So people have probably heard of Williams Foods if you're here in the Midwest, or Pioneer Flour or White Wings. C.H. Gunther makes the McGriddle for McDonald's and the little Cinnabon pulls for them. And in fact, you have not had a McGriddle unless you take it right off the line after it comes out of the oven. They're delicious when they're delicious all the time, but they're even better when they're fresh. And so I was with Gunther in food manufacturing, and it was very appealing to me. It wasn't really a step forward in my career for me. It was more of a lateral step. But getting out of trash and manufacturing and getting an opportunity in food and pharmaceutical manufacturing was really appealing to me. So I did that. After about 4 years with them as well, again, another opportunity came along and it was in construction this time. And so the company was a smaller company here in Kansas City called Musselman and Hall. And Musselman Hall was about a $70-80 million a year company, had about 300 employees. But they did railroad construction and maintenance, and then also asphalt and concrete. A lot of slab on grade, slab on deck concrete, that kind of stuff. And out of all the jobs I've done, that's the one that was the most interesting to me. Being out on these railroad construction projects and being out on these road construction projects and stuff, that was probably the one I've had the most fun with. But I wasn't with them for nearly as long. I was with them for 2 years. And then a recruiter called me one day and wanted to talk to me about an opportunity at DH Pace. And it's kind of funny because the first couple times she called me, I actually pushed her off to other people. I said, "Here, call this person." But she kept coming back to me and wanted me to take a look at the opportunity. And so I did. And ultimately, I decided to come over to DH Pace. And that would have been in 2018. So I came here. So I've been here now for working on 8 years.
Wonderful. Well, you broke your streak on the 4 and you kept on trucking. And so you obviously found a home, which is awesome. I'm very familiar with every one of the companies. In fact, I think we have from Musselman somebody who might be coming on the podcast. I believe so. That would be a full circle, small world kind of a thing. But it's interesting. So I often say that safety is an industry. It is not it's not something you do within an industry. That you find this very often that goes between different, because compliance is compliance and all the things, but the human aspect of keeping people safe, whether you're doing it on a railroad, whether you're doing it on the street, whether you're doing it subterranean, whether you're doing a skyscraper or a clean room, takes very different skills, backgrounds, knowledge, all that, which is, thank God for YellowBird, because that's why we exist, is because it's the nuances are vast and having the person who knows that is important. But I find that a lot of people do go between industry and between traditional industries, from trucking to construction to, subterranean to skyscraper to clean rooms and pharmaceuticals, which, by the way, I can't imagine a more different location than going from a refuse company to a pharmaceutical safety environment. That is quite I mean, that is, if I had to say two ends of a spectrum, that's got to be as far as you can get.
Yeah,
You
very
know,
different.
on
Very
on
different
that
for
kind of
sure.
thing. What was it like? So tell me about that. So what was that like? Going from, you know, they both obviously are human centric and people first, but just the type of programs. Was it culture shock for you
You know,
to?
real quickly, one of the things that very, very much interests me about safety, back when I was in school was, I heard a statistic that said my generation will change occupations 7 times.
Right.
And I tried to think about 7 occupations that I wanted to do, be a police officer, be a firefighter, be a plumber, be a jet pilot. I couldn't come up with 7 of them I wanted to do. And one thing I really liked about safety was that it didn't matter if you were building Jolly Ranchers or battleships, it's still lock tag out. It's still electrical safety. It is still personal protective equipment. It's still hazard recognition. So, even though going from a trash company to food manufacturing are very, very different environments, that leap is not a hard one to make whatsoever. It's very simple. It's just applying the principles that you learn, the basics of, we say what we do what we say. Let's, include as many people in the process as we possibly can. Let's get our operations folks involved. Let's get our maintenance folks involved, and let's figure out what the right thing to do is. At the same time, make sure the right thing includes compliance and, efficiencies and everything else that's going on with that. Let's write it down, and then let's do our best to stick to it, and you're going to get the results you want.
Love it. I absolutely love it. So tell us what DH Pace Company is. I don't think a lot of people across the country or around the world or wherever they're listening are familiar with the company. And you could be, by the way, I found this to be very true universally, could be the largest company in the world and I still wouldn't know it. There's so many things that I don't know about enterprises. So I'm not insulting your company at all. So I have no idea how large or small you all are, but tell us about you guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of customers that are working with us and they have no idea that they're working with us. That's probably a very true statement. So DH Pace is a dock and door company. And so we don't manufacture anything. We're on the distribution side of it. And so we operate under all kinds of trade names. And so the most common one that we operate under is Overhead Door. So Overhead Door is a different company from us. They are a manufacturer. And, of course, we're selling and servicing and distributing overhead door products at about half of our locations, I think. And then the other half of our locations, we operate under different names. Some of them we operate under DH Pace. Some of them we operate under local companies like Adams Door or King's Door or something like that. But some of the bigger locations that we have is like Overhead Door of Kansas City, Overhead Door of Atlanta, Overhead Door of St. Louis, Ankmar Garage Doors out in Denver. Those are some of the bigger ones that we have, but it's about 60 locations. The majority of our locations are smaller locations of, I'm going to say 30 people or less. And we cover predominantly in the South, but we also operate a part of our division that we call, our part of our operation that we call national accounts. And so national accounts are big customers where a customer comes to us and says, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of locations, and we want to deal with just one provider to keep our doors up and running and to replace our doors when needed. And so where we have a footprint, we will self-perform for those customers. And where we don't, then we'll take care of finding somebody in that area to perform whatever service they need.
You are basically the YellowBird of doors, because that is that is exactly what we do when it comes to, you get somebody with hundreds and hundreds of locations. We recently did like a 250 location in 27 states. And they were all YellowBird professionals, and we did it in 71 days. And the reason I say that is because folks are like, well, we have people, we can do it. I'm like, I know you can, but the efficiency and the single contact, it's kind of nice to hear somebody else who actually understands the value in having a programmatic national account kind of a mindset, because it's not easy to do. Even at your scale, it's not easy to do, but it's a lot easier than dealing with 40 different vendors. Right.
I tell people, especially from that standpoint, it's the Uber and the Amazons. The reason why those are doing so well is because they're just so darn convenient, right? It's just so easy. And so making it easy, providing a good product and a good service and being consistent in what you do, it's a great business model. It's a great place to be also. The company is privately owned. It's a big company, but it is a family owned company. And so it's just a great place to be. There's a lot of growth and opportunity happening in it. And, a lot of people really enjoy being here, and I do as well.
That's fantastic. So, from a scale perspective, how many people in your safety department do you oversee? Like, how many folks are actually that are dedicated full time to safety? And then there's obviously people who have multiple hats, and I recognize that that's a very common practice. And I can't imagine that you're different from that perspective. Everybody has somebody at each site that's responsible for safety. Well, everybody should be, of course, but is actually the main person. But what does your organization look like?
Yeah. So our safety department is 9 total people, including me. And so I have one admin and I have one claims manager, and then the rest of them are regional safety managers. And so we have a regional safety manager or an RSM in most of our big operations. So the way we're kind of set up is kind of a hub and spoke, where we have one of our big operations, let's say, for example, Kansas City. And so we have a regional safety manager here. And then that regional safety manager will support the entire region, which includes, Springfield, Joplin, Topeka, Wichita, St. Joe, Des Moines, Omaha, Columbia, et cetera, et cetera. So we do the same thing out of St. Louis, Atlanta, Denver, Dallas, and just support the surrounding operations, including multiple states they'll go out to. But that's how we're set up.
Have you guys grown through acquisition? Have you bought smaller organizations to open these markets, or have you grown ground up in each of them?
Both is happening simultaneously. Just the density, we're just growing within our operations, and we're getting more dense in the areas. We're also acquiring, when the opportunity is right for the company, and there's been quite a bit of opportunity recently in the door world. And so we are acquiring folks. And then, at times also we're opening up what the company calls a greenfield. So that is just, we're going in there and kind of getting a foothold somewhere and building something from scratch as well. That isn't as common as just our organic growth and our acquisitions, but it's part of the story for sure.
So do you have to travel a ton, given your role and, living on airplanes and cars? I mean, is that part of the job for you, is just travel?
It is part of the job for me, but it's not a big part by any means. I'm really blessed with my team. I have a great team that we built. We're very consistent in our team. Also, we don't have a lot of turnover, and so when I have all my people in place, they do the majority of the traveling, and a lot of their traveling is more windshield time or maybe a short hop. So if I'm getting out, it's usually for good stuff. I do a lot of employee appreciation dinners and events, probably more than anything. Or, if we have something going on, if I do need to support somebody, or if I have somebody who's, we just needs a little bit extra support, I'll get in there and help them out. But I would say I do about probably 25% or so travel.
That's very manageable compared to our peers and people in our industry. It can be really, really tough on families. I had 2 motivations, really 3 motivations when I came to start in the company. And first, there's so much waste in the training and survey side of the business. Just having somebody go from Kansas City to Denver to run a training with 15 people that you can have done for $1,500. it's a $5,000 expense and a week of time for somebody that really didn't have to do it. Like they didn't have to do that. And the sacrifice that families are making in safety is really unfortunate. And the other piece of the equation is our industry does have people aging out, and you have a lot of really wonderful knowledge workers, deep experienced people who everybody wants to consult. The reality is it is a pain in the butt to become a consultant. Just billing and receiving and getting the insurance and becoming a vendor, it's a pain. And so like I just wanted to make sure that people who wanted to consult could onboard and be easily placed places. So anyways, that's just, I went on a little tirade, but tangent. But the reality is I always ask about travel, and 25% is low for this industry. And by the way, for anybody listening, Chris is the aspiration for what you want to be in your safety career. Because if you get to the point where you get to go celebrate people and take people to appreciation dinners and be a great leader, and that is where you want to be. You do not want to be traveling to do 10, 15 trainings a month, because that is going to kill you. So, so back on the personal note for a moment. So you mentioned before we get going that Kansas City has this really cool thing, and I was not familiar with it. I think it's so neat. So tell me about this kind of company Olympics thing that you've got a couple of things on your wall behind you that we were mentioning. So tell me about that, and you know what I'm referring to. So
Yeah, the corporate challenge in Kansas City, it's a lot of fun. So it is it is a series of games and challenges. So it is volleyball. They do like a 5K, they do cornhole tournaments, they do bowling, they do weightlifting, they do some track and field stuff, they do all kinds of different events. And each company who participates in the corporate challenge, they kind of divvy you up by the size of the company, and that's what division you're in. And then you compete against other companies in the city to try and get, first place and get as many points as you can. And DH Pace wholeheartedly goes into it. We have a group here, we call it Team Impact, and they really focus on making DH Pace a fun place to be and a fun place to work. And so participating in the corporate challenge is something that we do. I think the last couple of years we've gotten second place, and we're striving for first place in our division. But I was actually a swimmer in high school. And so a few years back, I was available to participate in the swim meet through the corporate challenge. And so I did that and actually medaled in 2 events.
That's fantastic. And those are the things hanging behind you, those blue medals, or I think they're blue. They're the things hanging down. So super cool. That's such a fun. I said before, and I will say again, Kansas City has a culture of community that is really special. And this is a great example. I live in a great community. I love Phoenix. I love Scottsdale. But even here, we don't have that. That's a really neat thing. So, well, I just want to thank you, Chris. This was a fantastic conversation. I enjoyed this so much. And I hope very much that we can continue to communicate. And if we can ever be of service, please don't hesitate. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how YellowBird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit GoYellowBird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YellowBird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.